everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Life of Artist podcast. Today, my guest is Nila. She's an experienced executive producer for TV industry for over 20 years. Few years ago, she decided to step away from the industry and follow her true, real passion. So, without further ado, please welcome Nila. Life of Artist podcast. Thank you for accepting the invite. And let's start maybe from the question here. What was the start of your journey going into the TV industry? What was like the first reason you started to working there?
Because I liked the idea of changing people's thoughts or lives, not in a dramatic way, through storytelling. So when I first started, I didn't really know how TV worked, and it was a long time ago. It was over 20 years ago. So we didn't have courses. Now you have a lot of courses, and then back in the day you didn't. So I just liked the idea of naively. I thought I could just write and direct and produce my own kind of stuff, and yeah, I didn't know how to get into TV. I didn't know the routes into doing what I wanted to do, and I didn't know anyone.
So like you didn't know anyone, so how you were able to,
So I
pursue
got
it?
I got a job as a secretary in a locations library at the BBC, and that meant every location manager that works on TV programs came to the location library to look for a location. So through that, you met loads of location managers, and that was a great in to the BBC. But then I didn't really know how to make inroads into actually working on a TV show. And I went for lots of interviews as a runner or as a producer, and I got told that you need experience. But it's one of those things when you first start out in the industry that yeah, you need experience, but you need someone to also to give you your first job to be able to get that experience, and then the second job, and then when you've got a few under your belt, then you have experience. So I did a lot of free work experience at weekends on shows, and I used to using my day job. I used to use my holiday allowance that you have to go and then work as shadowing people.
So for how long you were like shadowing those people until like you were satisfied with your work?
Yeah, I guess until people would have a conversation with me. So I had something on my CV, and then I went traveling for a while and came back, and then I worked in PR at the BBC. And after doing that job, there was a crossroads where I could have just pursued that route, but I really did want to work in TV. And then a location manager that I worked with when I first started at the BBC had become a line producer. And so he said, "Oh, I might have something, and then just ring me." And so I rang him every Friday at 3 o'clock, and this was way before texting and stuff. I mean, you could text him, but I didn't want to be annoying, so I just used to ring him at 3 o'clock, and then he would know that it was always me and that I was still interested. And then eventually, he gave me a job.
That's amazing habit to continue to do so, because a lot of people are giving up, right? Oh, I'm not having a chance, but you keep in a habit to do something, to acquire
Yeah,
the
I
job.
guess. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I guess I didn't. Sometimes you know when it's time to give up, and sometimes you know that you think, yeah, this is worth keep going.
Yeah.
And so I did, and I got my first job, and I have to say, it was yeah. I worked at the BBC in the PR department. It was really like you got in at 9:30, 10 o'clock. If your hours were 10 to 6, and you worked like you worked your hours and you had a lunch break and you knew what you were doing, and there was a real shock to the system when I got my first TV job because you work all hours, you're on call all the time, and we were doing shooting hours, so I had night shoots. I had no idea what that meant, and and you work all the time. Like the job is always on your mind.
Mm,
And before that, it was just, yeah, I have a job and then I go home and
yeah.
then I don't think about it. But TV was just all consuming. And we were on location. It was a drama for 8 weeks, and it was 11-day fortnight. So you worked 11 out of 14 days. And we were all over London, and you just got, there was just such a tiredness to it.
Mm,
And at the time that I had the job, none of my friends were working in TV because I hadn't built up enough experience to have made friends in TV. So it was very much, why are you doing this? Because this seems nuts that you work so many hours, but you do get a buzz out of it,
mm.
really.
So can you describe the pressure working in that industry? Like from the actress perspective, I can see the pressure, but like for the wider audience, like what's the pressure? Like what's the stakes? Like working on, like, there's money
Yeah.
involved, huge money involved in the productions.
Yeah, and also, like, someone said to me quite early on, your last job is your next job. So what you do in the job that you're doing means you either work again or you won't. You can't. What I quite liked is that you can't really just get by unless you're good. So it was really important that I proved myself. Um, and and I got lots of things wrong, and but people were really forgiving about that. And I have heard, not so much now maybe, but before, when I first started, people were less forgiving. So if you did something wrong, there would be someone else that would take over your job. So you would really have to be on it, and yeah.
Like on the toes all the time, kind of.
Yeah, a little bit, and a little bit always trying to make sure you make a good impression, that you had your best self out there.
So looking back on the journey that you had, what was like the biggest takeaway that you took from those 20 years working there?
I think I mean, I really enjoyed, and I still do, working in the industry. I think as you get older, I do think it's a young person's game. I think if you can manage both, like I have family now, and so do lots of people. So I find that quite a struggle when I go and I see other women who are on set, and they're on set from 7 a.m. in the morning, and they're on until 7 p.m., and then they like travel London to get home. And I think that's quite intense, and I couldn't manage, but I personally couldn't manage both. So I feel that yeah, that it was really great, but the energy it consumes is, I don't think you can divide. You have to divide it, that energy that it takes, and I don't have that much of it.
So like going back to like what was the decision that you make, like, okay, I'm giving up the TV for now, like I need to work on myself. What was the main reason you decided, like, okay, I need to step back for now?
I think because I want to be good at whatever I choose to do. I want to be good at it, and I can't be good at either if I chose one or the other. And I can't really choose work over my family, and so and you always feel, if I was in the middle of a field on a set, I would feel I was missing out either which way. And if I was at home, I see it with people that do try and manage both, that they do a really great job, but sometimes when they're on set and they're needed on set, then people are also not always so understanding of why are they not here. So I do feel that I don't think I have it in me to be that person that can try and manage both, because I would do a terrible job at it.
So when you were working there, you felt like this connection between those two worlds coming up in your life, like you couldn't, you wanted something else.
No, I just feel like I can't. It takes up a lot of energy when people call you all the time, and then you have bath time or you have something else, and you just you can't be in two places, and you can't give your focus on two things. And I just didn't want. But lots of actresses and lots of female producers and writers, and lots of people do it. And I have to think that's really great that they can manage both, because I wouldn't be able to.
I think it's very hard, but like it's like I think every time you have to ask your question to yourself, are you really wanted to do that the next day, or like that you're looking to combine those two worlds? And I think that's okay to have like this bravery to step out and like I want to do something else in my life, right?
Yeah, and also I feel it comes back. It will, hopefully it will. I remember once a friend said, if you stepped out for 5 years and you did something else, whatever that is if it's another career or a family or travel the world, whatever it is, you chose to do that, and you decide to come back in. If you have enough experience in contacts, you can come back in, and
Yeah.
that's also okay to know. Hopefully, that world would open up again.
Yeah. But I think it's important to take breaks sometimes because, like, like acting schools, whatever, then you're going for the TV set is very intense labor, like many, many hours. And I think, in your perspective, too, it's important to take breaks. So, when you were taking the breaks, when, how long do you were taking the breaks from? Like, you took for,
Yeah, well, I took a break, and this was before I met my husband, and I took a break because um, I was not burnt out, but just a bit tired of how it can consume you, and I wanted a more work-life balance. And I decided to focus on setting up a cooking business, and I did quite well in it. But then a job offer came in, and then I went back. So I never really made a conscious effort to take a certain amount of time off. I was more, I'm going to do this for a while and then see what happens, and that's kind of what I did. But then TV came back, and I got a contract. And when I left the UK to move to Netherlands, the same thing happened, and I moved here, and I knew it was before COVID, and I didn't think I would get a job back in TV again, and I didn't. I looked here, but not very hard. So then I again set up a cooking business, and that was going well. And so I didn't think I'd work because no one wanted remote workers, and I tried commuting back and forth from London, and again that didn't work in a family setup. So then I just had to say that I don't think this is going to work for me, and it was really hard because um, yeah, I find it a real conflict of interest to when I got job offers. For ages, I would have panic attacks about what to do, and then I made a decision that I just would not contemplate the decision making process of what to do, of whether to take a job, and the pros and cons and how it would affect my life here was just too overwhelming. So then, as hard as it was when I decided to just not take anything, it was a bit easier for me, and that's what I did. And then we had then we had a daughter, and then COVID happened, and then after that I got another job offer, and that was to remote work as a production executive on TV shows, but part time. And so when I'd closed the door before COVID, when I moved here, it did open up again, but in a different capacity. So it was a different job role, and it meant that I didn't have to be on set for 8 weeks, 10 weeks of at a time. Um, but I could work remotely, and so that works.
yeah. So how your life changed? Because, I used to live in England for a while, so I know how is there, but how you compare your life living in UK and now in Netherlands? Do you see any
Yeah,
difference or?
yeah, it's really different. Well, because I moved here, and I used to live in London. And when I met my boyfriend, now husband, we still do, but we live in a really small village, and that was never the intention. It was we always said we would move, and we will, but we kind of prioritized other things. And so the difference from living in a big city to a small town was massive for me. And I think moving from a big city to a small town anywhere in the world is a transition.
It is, yeah.
And then I had to learn a new language, and everything was very different. But yeah, now it's fine.
So I have a question here because like you step away, and you decided to do you said you wrote the book. I'm like writing a book is very personal, is very like time consuming, and like a lot of energy is going into it. So why you started writing a book? Like, what was the reason
Yeah,
behind
so
it?
I had all these ideas, and I used to write scripts, not brilliantly, but then I thought, oh, why don't I just change the script? I had an idea, and it was not more that, oh, I want to write a book. I think about an idea. I had an idea, and I didn't know in which format to tell it, and I started writing it in a screenplay format, and it just was too big for me to work out how to do. So then I decided, oh, I do a book writing course and use that as and then do it that way.
Wow. That's a brave, I would say. Like you said you didn't have experience that much in writing
No, I
professionally.
didn't, and I didn't think I would be very good at it. I'm not saying I'm brilliant either, but I did this course, and it was really intense course, and you had to like critique each other's work, and I was really. You had to hand in your work by the Saturday, and then you had to give feedback for two other people in the group by Sunday, and there were
Oh
six other
wow.
people in the group, and there were different assignments. So some of it was about plot, some of it was about point of view. So each week was a different theme about a book, about writing a book. And so every Sunday I would be so nervous about the criticism, well, not criticism, but the critique. And but it was good. I'm not saying it was brilliant, but I got a lot of positive feedback, and from there, I kept in touch with a couple of women from the group. So we write now, and then we do a Zoom every 2 weeks. So we hand in our work a couple of days, and then we read each other's work, and then we give feedback and ideas of how we can, what what we think of what each other have wrote, and then we've taken it from there. So now I'm about a third of the way in since I started.
So since you made a switch in your life, like how you deal with the rejection, because like like whenever you're building up, you're going to the new directions, you're always facing a lot of rejection. So how you dealing with the rejections now after being 20 years in the industry in TV? How you deal with that
Y-
now?
Yeah, so with work, it's really different. When I first started out in the industry, I'd go for interviews, and they'd say I'd have the job, and then no one would ring me, and then I'd see them. I saw one lady in a supermarket, and she was supposed to have rang me for my start day, and she didn't even make eye contact, but she'd given me a job. And and then after like a week of waiting, I assumed that actually I wasn't the job wasn't going to come my way, and that happened a couple of times. And then one time I went for a job interview, and she talked about the date and the rates, and we had everything sorted, and she said, oh, you can start on this day. And then I was like ready to start, and then she just stopped taking my calls. And then someone else that I knew rang me about something, and he said, oh, um he mentioned that someone else had rang him about work on a show, and that person that rang him had been the person that was now doing the job that I had been offered.
Oh wow.
And so I guess those are forms of rejection that I've had when trying to get a job. And back in the day, I was quite naive that it was more make or break. It was kind of, "Oh, if I don't get this job, then the world's going to end." But now, after the 20 years, I think, oh, just it is personal. Somehow they offered me a job, and then someone better in their eyes came along, and they didn't have the courtesy to let me know that they'd gone and given it to someone else. And I do think that's pretty shit that they've done that. However, I do think just wasn't meant to be. Like I wasn't meant to have that job. Another job then, funnily enough, came my way, and I worked on that for 2, 3 years, and they were great, and I had flexible working, and I met great friends, and so it was fine. I wasn't meant to have that job, but at the same time, it felt like a form of rejection because it was very personal, because they'd met me, they'd offered it to me, but then they'd met someone else who they liked more for had more experience. I'm not sure. And I've kind of over the years have got used to that form of rejection.
Mm.
But now I've started writing, especially when I started with like other writers. I think that kind of rejection, not that it's rejection, but even a criticism, I think when it's so close to you and it's a story that it's so deep within you that you're trying to tell, then that is a different form of criticism that feels like rejection more. Like when you're going out with someone and you're really into them and then it turns out they're not into you as much. That it feels a bit more deeper. The rejection feels deeper. And I do think that I will then it should it work out and I can write and I can carry on writing as a career. This is more of a let's see how it goes thing. But if that was to be the case, then I do think I'd have to deal and work out how to deal with that form of rejection in the same way that I had to learn how to deal with the rejection when I started in the industry.
So what do you think, like in terms of the rejection part, what keeps you going? Because you had like support from the family, from friends, like, like it's easier to give up and not
Yeah.
do anything, right? Going to like grocery store and work, for instance. But like, why did you kept going?
I think because I don't know what made me keep going, but I just felt it again, like I said, it didn't feel like it was time for me to give up. Like they wouldn't be the cause of me giving up. That would have to come from me,
Yeah.
I think. And as along the way you meet colleagues that become friends and then you have more of a support network and you tell people and like, oh yeah, that's really crap, but the so and so happened to me, and you work out that the industry, as lovely and fun as it is also quite fickle, and you're just another person to some people, not to everyone but to some people, and that is more on how they are, not on you. So that is, I guess, what I have taken away, that it's not a reflection on you so much. Maybe you are less experienced, maybe you're not as fun as they hoped you would be, or whatever their criteria is, but mainly if they can't be bothered to pick up the phone and say you don't have that job anymore even though we promised it you, or whatever the rejection is, if they don't have it in you to just be able to give you honest feedback, then I think that's more on them really. And back in the day when I first started, I don't think I would have had it in me to ask. And now I think, oh, I might just pick up the phone and say, what happened there? Do you mind if I ask? It just helps me to move forward.
Think, I'm like still cannot do those calls. Like I'll have those situations and I think I struggle still to do those calls. Like why, what happened? But I think that's very important because you get the clarity
Yeah,
there. So it's only one person's opinion. On the end of the day, it's not like the whole world. But like I think the clarity in those cases is very important to move on.
yeah, yeah, I think so, because then you kind of think, what did I do wrong? Like you met me, you offered me a job, and then you didn't follow through. What was your kind of reasoning after I left that you thought, oh shit, I made a mistake? And that's okay if you're honest enough. Just then call me up. The disappointment in that moment is better than the constantly wondering what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. But I have a very interesting question. I never asked, but I think it's very interesting to me since like I am an actor and like how do you see working with the actors on set on their life? Like how you feel working with them? Like
Yeah, as in, well, I always feel not. Well, the thing is, from my kind of position of where I am, that actors are really, yeah, without them can't do anything. So you have to treat them really, really well, and whatever. It's not that whatever they say goes, but you have to be more respectful to them than you would possibly, yeah, and I hate to say it, but possibly a crew member, because you always want them to be well looked after.
so like now you moved on with your life and you're in the Netherlands. So how your life changed with like, now you have a children, like what's your perspective? What keeps you inspired now in life?
Um, the same things, I guess. Just to be interested in things, the world, things around me, and be interesting as much as I can. I think it's important to grow. and always be learning. So I guess
Yeah.
it's the same things, but I have less time, and the people, yeah, you have less things that you can, like now I don't have, I can't read as much because I don't have so much time to read. Before I used to read when I was on the tube going to work, or but now I have a dog, so I listen to my audiobook. So you change things, I guess. And like I always wanted to write, but I think if I had done it 10 years ago, I don't think I would have had the patience.
Oh, interesting.
And I think, I think, oh, it's a shame I didn't discover writing earlier, because I would have been, had I been good enough and I loved it enough, then I would have just made a career out of that. But I didn't, and I've only discovered it now, and I find that quite a shame. But then a friend said to me, but maybe you just wasn't ready at that time. And I do think
Yeah.
maybe I just had so much nervous energy back in the day that I think the idea of sitting down and writing for 3 hours would have been like, oh my God. But now I can happily sit down and write.
So you think that in your case, the patience keeps you motivated now because you have way more patience than before. So now you feel more ready.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I have more patience and a bit more, yeah, I guess more, less nervous energy than I had, and more accepting of things.
What advice you'll give to your younger self?
Um, yeah, I guess I guess not to give up, to ask more, to take more risks, I guess. And I started off, as I said, I wanted to write and I wanted to produce and and I can't, and then I fell into a route of, if you want to be a producer, you follow this route. Whereas I could have just wrote, and I could have just then pitched my work and then got it. Like there was other things I could have done, and I guess I was just maybe too naive or maybe too scared. But now I think just take more risks. I took enough risks by being in an industry, coming from my background, that it was not a stable job. That was a risk in itself. But I think I could have taken more risks creatively. There was a job, and I was working in production, helping make the show. But they had a big writers team, and I'd always been interested in that. And I could have then asked if I could do a few afternoons in that writers, and that could have given me more confidence. And but I didn't, and so now I think, yeah, to just take more steps to do what you want to do. Don't kind of follow a route.
But
Make your own route.
did you make peace with that decision that you made back then?
Yeah, because I guess it wasn't meant to be at that time. And I kind of think you can't live your life in regret, otherwise you'll constantly
Yeah,
be unhappy about everything. You are where you
absolutely.
are. Yeah, and you can't change that, and that's absolutely fine. And I do think different things come at different times. It doesn't come before you're ready. So maybe I wasn't ready. But I do think I see those people that have become really successful in what they wanted to do, either directing or writing, but in the realms of television. And I do think some of it was opportunity, but some of it was pushing themselves forward, self promotion, being, making the right contacts. And I wasn't that person. So I do think I wouldn't change who I am, but maybe I would have handled different situations differently.
So is anything you would like to share, like working on your book now? Can you say like to our audience at the podcast what you're working on?
Oh yeah, it's a book about um, parallel lives. I'm quite interested in parallel lives. So we were in India. It's not a book about me, but I'm just drawing on some experiences. But we were in India, and my husband said, "Oh, it'd be funny if your family had chosen not to emigrate to the UK." And
Yeah.
I did think, "Oh yeah, that would be interesting because my life would have been really different. It's a different
Yeah.
culture there, but it's just completely like my life. So it got me to thinking of all people that immigrate or have to leave their country. Are you the same person, or
Mm.
would you have, or the opportunities in the environment and the social kind of environment that you're in, is that a reflection of who you become? Or are you essentially the same person? Do you handle things differently? So, and are you happier in either life? So the book is focused on one woman, and at the beginning, her parents, one of her father gets a job offer, and they have to make a decision to stay or go. And one kind of line of the book follows her growing up. Her parents are pregnant at the time with her, and then one line of the book follows her staying in India, and the other one follows her that they moved.
Wow. Oh my god, I cannot wait to see that. I think that's a lot of people gonna resonate with that.
Yeah, I think there's so many people's lives that change, like
Yeah.
yeah, daily, and I often wonder, oh, had you not have, if you'd stayed in your own country, then what would have your life been like?
Yeah. Well, so keep us updated. Like whenever we have the you published, let's do another
Yeah,
episode
another
and let's
episode.
let's
Yeah.
let's keep from there. All right. Thank you for time and the energy and the great conversation because I know you're so busy. So thank you so much, and I wish you all the best. Thank you for listening. It means the world to me. But I need you to ask you a quick favor. Can you please click and subscribe? And see you in the next one.